Hello and welcome back to the workshop. This is the clean room area and it's not very clean yet. I've got my desk here and some stuff here that needs to be sorted, and along this wall is camera gear and metrology and that kind of thing. And here I've got electronics and books and 3D printer and components, and on my desk I will do my video editing and IT work. I do IT work for a living, and some of that is done at home and some of it is done in clients' houses and businesses' premises and that kind of thing. But the bit of it that needs to be done at home can be done here. And this room will have walls around it when I get round to building them. It gets pretty cold, so I'm dressed up warm. It's about 15 degrees C in here at the moment. And yeah, I could do with a bit of insulation. But I'll give you a couple of shots of this area and then you can see what's going on. So this is the first wall of my clean area. I've got my surface plate, metrology gear, camera stuff and more camera lights and stands and things, and a moving blanket for soundproofing and all that kind of stuff. It's in a bit of a mess, but this is roughly where these things will go. And this is my desk area where I do my editing, and I've got my 3D printer and some components. And you should be able to see some of the new lights that go down the length of this room, and some of the new PowerPoints. We had electricians in last week or the week before, and ended up getting a whole load of sockets and lights put in. So it's much better for filming. And over here, like I was saying, I've got electronics, components and instruments and some of my books and sort of home office stuff. I'm really hoping to get a proper bookcase made up. And you know, I've got a woodwork area, so I should be able to do that myself. And it'd be nice to have these books stored properly. And I've always felt limited in previous places that we've lived, and I've always had to keep a sort of cap on how many books I can actually keep hold of after I've read them. But I want to get out of that habit. I want to start keeping more of them. So yeah, looking forward to that. And that concludes the clean area. So I'll give you a quick look at the grinding area, which is, you know, barely been started, but I'll turn the camera around and show you that. Now this is the area that's probably lagging behind the other areas the most. I want to get rid of these cabinets because they're actually not connected to this wall in a very good way. The way they're set up, if you load them up, they'll try and pull this top brick off and roll it backwards. So I'm not interested in that. I do have my D-bit grinder in here. I have my bench grinder and buffer and my other bench grinder. I've got my pallet jack and some junk that needs to be sorted, and some stands and bandsaw and heater. And half of that doesn't belong in here. But you know, this is just a work in progress. I'm just trying to give you an update so that you can see where I'm up to. I'm a little bit embarrassed to show you this area because there's just so much in the way of materials. I don't know if it really comes across on camera. I've got this wall and I've stacked timber and metals up against this wall, and from here to there is 6 meters. So, and some of these bits of wood are 2.4 or 2.7 long. So I've got steel, stainless, aluminium, brass, Taz oak, Merbau, dowels and things, celery top pine, sassafras, some bits of ordinary pine, and then I've got this cabinet with sassafras, hewn, celery top, myrtle. Yeah, I'm a complete pack rat when it comes to materials, and yeah, I need to start making some stuff so that I don't have to store all these materials. And on the left here I've got plate and sheet metal against the wall at the back, and plywood and MDF and that kind of thing, sheet woods in front of that. This area is not very well lit, but I do intend to change that. I've got plug bases where needed, and I've got some extra panels that will be These are LED panels. These will get hung up in that area. Okay, well this is the lathe corner of the metalwork area, and I've got this Primo Mark III lathe, which you've seen in all any previous lathe videos where I've actually done any machining. This is the lathe you will have seen, and now you can see it really for the first time ever properly. And I've got all my quick change tooling, change gears, steadies and all that kind of stuff, and chucks. At least it's all in one place and it's ready to kind of reassemble and re-level and use. I've got power for it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to having this running again, and it's on the cusp of being able to run again. Here beside me I've got my Emco V10P, which is a lathe that I bought 8 or 10 months ago, and it was in a really poor condition, and I've restored all of the castings and everything. I've restored all the gears and bearings and all that kind of stuff, and the one piece that's missing before it's functional is the motor. And I've got a motor and I've got a VFD, and I've got to make a couple of pulleys and buy a custom belt for it, and then I need to make a cabinet to stand it on. So I suppose that's two things: the motor connections and the cabinet. And here is more materials. Don't ask, I've just got too many materials. And this is the back wall behind the desk of the clean room area, just so you're oriented in the space. And this will obviously be a wall at some point, but I can't have a lathe here spitting coolant and chips at my computer. So in the meantime, I think I might just put a piece of plywood in here, just so that the lathe is usable. This is the main daily driver lathe at the moment. So yeah, there's power for everything and there's good lighting. So yeah, nearly there with the lathes. And I've kind of settled on this place for the milling machine. The mill is the sort of deepest tool, and also when the table is fully out in both directions, it takes up a surprising amount of space. And if you calculate the space that you need to stand in front of a mill, a full-size mill, and the space that you need to be allowing for the table to come in and out both directions, and that's not even counting the head sliding in and out and pivoting round. A floor standing mill, and this is a fraction bigger than a Bridgeport basically, but you could count them as the same. It basically takes up half of a garage bay, half of a single car bay in terms of width and depth. And I've got this one sat on a pallet right now, which is great. I've got a nice pallet that's got two central spars, and a lot of pallets have a single one, and that makes the whole thing wobbly, whereas this is quite stable, and I think I like this height better. It suits my height. I'm 6'2" or 187 centimetres, and so all of these things are the right height for me. So I'm going to make a steel pallet that broadens the stance of the bottom of this mill and allows it to be movable by the pallet jack. And this machine is actually up and running, so I can switch it on and I can use this machine. And I've got the VFD up and running. If I switch it on, so that is a good feeling. I can now mill stuff. And a mill doesn't really need levelling in quite the same way that a lathe does. So I can pretty much go for it with this machine. And beside the mill, I've got the black drawers that I had, and these really have all of my lathe and mill stuff. The two lathes that you saw are there, the mill is here, and there's probably 2.5 meters between them. So this is actually a reasonable space to do any kind of larger assembly stuff. If I've got furniture or a larger fabrication that I'm trying to put together, having a bit of floor space is a really nice thing, and it's something I've never had before. So I'm looking forward to keeping this area free. Yeah, so tooling in there, clamps and lathe tools and all that kind of stuff, setup tooling, stones, drills and reamers, that kind of stuff. That's this area. And this area is probably the area that's going to grow the most. This is my miniature fabrication area. And I've got a small welding bench and vise and welder, compressor, arbor press, drill press. This is a bar bender that I've had for a long time. And the only way I've been able to use this so far is mounted to a piece of square tube in the trailer hitch of my car. And so far, even with all the leverage, I haven't been able to move the car, so that works. But I'd like to have it inside the workshop, obviously. I've also got a torch and some fire bricks. I'd like to be set up for heat treatment of tool steels and things like that. And I'd like to set myself up with things like especially a bending brake. But you know, if I end up with things like a plasma cutter and a guillotine and stuff like that, that'd be really nice. I don't really have room to put them, so I've got to be careful there. But just having a bit of room dedicated for this stuff is really useful. I seem to, about half of the projects I do for outside the workshop, for paying jobs, seem to be, they just happen to be welding and fabricating related. So it makes sense to sort of focus on this area a little bit more. And this is kind of the long shot of the woodwork area. Please ignore this mess on the floor. I still believe that the floor should not be a shelf, but when you're moving house, you've got to make some concessions somewhere. And half of this stuff is things I've bought since I've been here and they just don't have a home. So I'll get to that. Please ignore that bit. Working around the room, sort of clockwise from here, I've got my wooden shelf with all my potions, as I think of them. So I've got adhesives and lubricants, solvents, finishes, paint prep, things like rust converters and paints and fillers, cleaning. It's all there. And I like that pretty much all of my liquids and pastes and things that are some kind of chemical use are all there. And that's kind of between the metalwork and the woodwork area because it's a shared thing. And the drill press that you saw, I've only got one drill press and that will be shared between sort of fabricating and woodwork. I'll just have to keep the table very clear. But in general, between the metalwork area, which is where the camera is, and the woodwork area, there's at least 3-4 meters between like the mill and the bandsaw. And the dust extraction does a good job, so that should keep chips off the ways of my machines that need to stay clean and precise and oiled. And the chips from those machines, I know they don't fly far enough to really get into this area. So although there's no wall, there's enough gap that I should be okay. Going back to the room description, we've got the potions that I mentioned, the bandsaw that you would have seen in previous videos. Still an unfinished project, but also it's very usable, so I just use it. But I need to put a lower cabinet cover on, and I need to make a drawer for underneath, and then it's done. And I need to put some finish on it. Here I've got black drawers. These have a range of things in, files and saws and screws and nuts and bolts. Accessories for the bench grinder and the D-bit grinder. Obviously they have to go into the grinding room. Just haven't got that far yet. These cabinets have a lot of hardware in and a few tools, router bits and table saw bits, air tools, angle grinder stuff. Yep. This is still the sort of lifting and handling gear, and this is I like that it's all tucked into one corner, but it could be sort of on shelves and against the walls a little bit more. That'd be nice. Got my big workbench here, and most of my power tools are under it, and there's a filing cabinet on that end of it. More power tools in there. Table saw, and on that wall there we've got the thicknesser. This is a 15-inch thicknesser, 3 horsepower, so it needs a pretty beefy power supply. Sawhorses and a 2 horsepower jointer, which is quite a nice unit. And clamps need a home. I've got clamps all over my desk, all over my workbench, and there's nowhere good for them to go yet. But yeah, it's all a work in progress. And that's pretty much the whole space. Well, thank you for watching. I'm sorry the updates are a little bit few and far between, but for a long time I didn't have any lights in here and it was very hard to make a watchable video. And I've also had lots of things on my plate as far as keeping the house maintained and fixing and upgrading some various bits on the house, and also paying work in the form of IT work mostly has been taking up quite a bit of my time. So although I've been in here for 3.5 weeks since we finished moving, since we finished, you know, basically doing trailer runs every day, I've had about 3.5 weeks since then, coming up to 4 weeks. I think I've done okay, and I've got things roughly in their place and to an almost usable state. Once I get to the point where everything's as usable as it was in my last workshop, I'll be quite happy. And then there are sort of upgrades to do to this space, like painting the floor, which will happen when the weather warms up. We're just coming into winter, and there's no point doing it now. And I want to point or render the walls and then paint those. That'll help with the light situation, and it'll make the videos look good, and it'll make the place feel cleaner and brighter and easier to see everything. Yeah, so there's some bigger, longer term things to do to the space, but I'm quite excited to just have my machines, you know, be able to walk up to my machines and use them, or very, very close to that point. So I'll try for a bit more regular updates and try for some project videos. I have a lot of footage of building a trailer cage, so it's really a fabrication job, trailer cage for my trailer, and it was a bit of a rush, so I got that sort of 3/4 complete before moving, and really that's a project that needs finishing off, so that may well be my first project in the new space. I could get that finished and finish off the footage and make that a video for you. That would be a weird video because 2/3 of it or 3/4 of it is done at the old workshop, and the rest would have to be done here. So, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll try and make another video in the next week or so, and see you next time. Cheers.